Bad Nauheim, Germany, November 15th. Private Elvis Presley is awakened in his off-base housing not by his alarm clock, but by a firm hand on his shoulder. Standing beside his bed is Captain James Morrison, a man Elvis has never seen before, wearing civilian clothes despite his obvious military bearing. "Private Presley," the man says quietly, "get dressed. You're coming with me." Elvis sits up, disoriented. "Sir, I'm not on duty until 0600. Is there some kind of emergency?" "You could say that. Get dressed. Tell no one where you're going. If anyone asks, you were never awake, and this conversation never happened." This is creative storytelling inspired by Elvis's military service in Germany during one of the most tense periods of the Cold War, when American intelligence operations were at their peak in Europe. Elvis quickly dresses in civilian clothes as instructed and follows Captain Morrison to a black sedan parked outside his apartment building. As they drive through the dark German countryside, Elvis tries to understand what's happening. "Captain, where are we going? What's this about?" Morrison glances at Elvis through the rear-view mirror. "Private, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. You're being recruited for a special operation that requires someone with your unique qualifications." "My qualifications?" "Sir, I'm just a regular soldier. I drive trucks and file paperwork." Morrison pulls the car over and turns to face Elvis directly. "Private, you're not just a regular soldier. You're Elvis Presley. You're the most famous person in the world, and that makes you incredibly valuable to the United States government." Elvis feels a chill run down his spine. Valuable how? The Cold War isn't just fought with missiles and armies, Private. It's fought with information, with psychology, with symbols. Elvis Presley, serving in the U.S. Army, is one of the most powerful propaganda tools America has ever had. But we need you to be more than just a symbol. They arrive at what appears to be an abandoned farmhouse about an hour outside of Bad Nauheim. But as they approach the building, Elvis realizes it's not abandoned at all. The windows are covered, but light seeps around the edges. Guards in civilian clothes stand at strategic positions around the property. Inside, the farmhouse has been converted into a sophisticated communications and intelligence facility. Maps of East Germany cover the walls. Radio equipment fills one corner. Several men in suits look up as Morrison and Elvis enter. "Gentlemen," Morrison announces, "meet our new asset." Colonel William Bradford, the apparent leader of this operation, approaches Elvis with a serious expression. "Private Presley, welcome to Operation Heartbreak Hotel." Elvis almost laughs at the code name, but the grim expressions around him make it clear this is no joke. "Sir, I don't understand what you want from me." Colonel Bradford points to a map of divided Germany. "Private, East Germany is experiencing significant unrest. The communist government is struggling to maintain control, particularly among young people. They're drawn to American culture, American music, American freedom, your music." End quote. Elvis looks at the map, still confused. "I'm honored that people like my music, sir, but I don't see how that helps with military operations." "Here's what we know," Bradford continues. "Underground radio stations in East Germany are broadcasting your songs, despite government bans. Young East Germans are risking imprisonment to listen to rock and roll. Communist authorities are terrified that American cultural influence will undermine their control." Morrison takes over the briefing. "What we need, Private, is for you to become a secret weapon in the culture war. We want you to help us establish contact with resistance groups in East Germany. We want you to record special messages that will be broadcast on pirate radio stations. We want you to help us give hope to people who are living under oppression." Elvis sits down heavily in a nearby chair. "You want me to be a spy?" "We want you to be Elvis Presley," Bradford says, "but Elvis Presley working for American intelligence. Over the next several hours, Elvis learns about the scope of Operation Heartbreak Hotel. The U.S. Army has been planning this mission for months, waiting for the right opportunity to use Elvis's fame as a tool of psychological warfare against the Soviet Union and East Germany. The operation involves several components. Elvis will record special versions of his songs with coded messages for resistance fighters. He will make personal appearances near the East German border, where his presence will be detected by communist surveillance and reported to Moscow as evidence of American cultural penetration. Most dangerously, he will occasionally cross into East Berlin undercover to meet with Soviet defectors and gather intelligence. "This is insane," Elvis says finally. "I'm not trained for this kind of work. I don't know anything about espionage." "You don't need to know about traditional espionage," Morrison explains. "You just need to be yourself. Your fame gives you access to places and people that trained spies could never reach." Soviet officials are so curious about American culture that they'll meet with you just to say they've met Elvis Presley. Colonel Bradford opens a file folder and shows Elvis photographs of young people in East Germany listening to contraband radios, dancing to rock and roll music in hidden clubs, wearing American-style clothing despite government prohibitions. These people are risking everything just to experience a small piece of American freedom, Bradford says. Your music gives them hope that there's something better than the gray, oppressive world they're forced to live in. We want to use that hope as a weapon. Elvis studies the photographs, seeing teenagers who look remarkably similar to his own fans back in America, but with a desperate quality in their eyes that his American fans don't have. "What happens if I get caught? What happens if the Soviets figure out what we're doing?" "Then you disappear," Morrison says bluntly, "and officially, the U.S. government has no knowledge of your activities." Elvis realizes he's being asked to risk not just his career, but his life, for a mission he never volunteered for. But as he looks at the photographs of young East Germans whose only crime is wanting to listen to American music, he understands that this is bigger than his personal comfort or safety. "What do you need me to do?" The first phase of Operation Heartbreak Hotel begins immediately. Elvis is driven to a secret recording studio hidden in the basement of what appears to be a German textile factory. The equipment is more sophisticated than anything he's used at RCA, and the technicians are clearly military personnel disguised as civilians. Elvis records several songs with subtle coded messages embedded in the lyrics. "Don't Be Cruel" becomes a call for resistance against oppressive authority. "Love Me Tender" contains hidden instructions for contacting American intelligence agents. "Hound Dog" includes coordinates for secret meeting locations. The recordings will be smuggled into East Germany and broadcast on pirate radio stations operated by resistance groups. Soviet authorities won't be able to ban Elvis Presley's music without acknowledging its power, but they also won't be able to allow it without undermining their own control. But the recording sessions are just preparation for Elvis's real mission, crossing into East Berlin to meet with a high-ranking Soviet defector who claims to have information about planned communist expansion in Southeast Asia. The border crossing happens on a cold December night in 1959. Elvis, disguised as a German businessman, travels with forged papers through Checkpoint Charlie. The experience is terrifying. Soviet guards scrutinize his documents, while Elvis tries to maintain his cover despite being the most recognizable face in the world. The meeting with the defector, codenamed Red King, takes place in a bombed-out church in East Berlin. The man, a Soviet military intelligence officer named Dmitry Volkov, is risking his life to provide information about communist plans for Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. But Volkov is also an Elvis fan. When he realizes who he's actually meeting with, he's so starstruck that he nearly blows both their covers. "You are really Elvis Presley?" Volkov whispers in broken English. "The king of rock and roll?" Elvis nods, terrified that their conversation is being overheard by Soviet surveillance. "My daughter, She listens to your music on secret radio. She dreams of America. She dreams of freedom. The intelligence exchange becomes deeply personal as Volkov explains that he's defecting not just because he opposes communism, but because he wants his daughter to grow up in a world where she can listen to any music she wants without fear of imprisonment. Elvis realizes that Operation Heartbreak Hotel isn't just about gathering intelligence, it's about human connections that transcend political systems. Over the next several months, Elvis participates in multiple border crossings and intelligence operations. He meets with resistance fighters in Budapest, records coded messages for broadcast in Poland, and even attends a secret concert in Prague, where Czech teenagers risk everything just to hear American rock and roll performed live. But the psychological toll is enormous. Elvis begins suffering from nightmares, anxiety attacks, and a growing paranoia that he's being watched everywhere he goes. The pressure of maintaining his cover while performing increasingly dangerous missions begins to break down his mental health. The most traumatic incident occurs in March 1960, when a resistance fighter Elvis has been working with, a young German woman, codenamed Songbird, is captured by Soviet agents. Elvis learns that she's been tortured and executed, and he blames himself for her death. "I recruited her," Elvis tells Morrison during a debriefing session. "I convinced her that helping us was worth the risk. Now she's dead because of me." Morrison tries to reassure Elvis that Songbird knew the risks, but Elvis is devastated by the realization that his actions have consequences he never anticipated. The final operation of Elvis's intelligence career nearly destroys him completely. In May 1960, just before his discharge from the Army, Elvis is asked to participate in a mission to extract a Soviet scientist who has developed new missile technology that NATO desperately needs. The extraction goes wrong. Soviet agents surround the safe house where Elvis is meeting with the scientist. In the ensuing firefight, the scientist is killed, and Elvis barely escapes with his life. The experience leaves Elvis with what would today be recognized as severe PTSD. He returns to America in March 1960, a changed man, paranoid, isolated, and haunted by the knowledge that he's been responsible for both saving and destroying lives. Colonel Bradford and Captain Morrison visit Elvis one final time before his return to civilian life. "Private Presley, your service to your country goes far beyond anything the public will ever know," Bradford tells him. "The intelligence you gathered helped prevent Soviet expansion in several key regions. The morale you provided to resistance fighters saved countless lives. You should be proud of what you accomplished." But Elvis doesn't feel proud. He feels broken. "Colonel, I just want to go home and make music. I don't ever want to think about any of this again." "That's understandable, son. But you need to understand that everything you did in Germany is classified at the highest levels. You can never speak about Operation Heartbreak Hotel to anyone. Not your family, not your friends, not the press. As far as the world knows, you spent 2 years in the Army driving trucks and doing paperwork." Elvis nods, understanding that he's being asked to carry these secrets for the rest of his life. The cover-up is immediate and thorough. Elvis's military records are altered to show routine service with no special assignments. The men he worked with in Germany are reassigned to different units and instructed never to contact him again. Operation Heartbreak Hotel officially never happened. Elvis returns to America in March 1960 and immediately throws himself into his music career with an intensity that surprises everyone around him. But those closest to him notice changes in his behavior that they can't explain. He becomes increasingly paranoid about government surveillance. He develops an obsession with guns and security. He begins taking prescription drugs to cope with anxiety and insomnia that seem to have no obvious cause. Most significantly, he becomes obsessed with movies about World War II and Cold War espionage. Friends and family members notice that he watches The Manchurian Candidate repeatedly. and he seems fascinated by stories about soldiers who return from war carrying secrets they can never share. The trauma of Operation Heartbreak Hotel affects every aspect of Elvis's post-army career. His music becomes more intense and emotional. His performances take on a desperate quality that wasn't there before Germany. He seems to be constantly searching for something he can't name or find. Colonel Parker notices the changes but attributes them to Elvis's natural maturation as a performer. He has no idea that Elvis has been fundamentally changed by experiences that would challenge any person's mental health. The secret weighs on Elvis for the rest of his life. In interviews, he occasionally makes vague references to his military service being more complicated than people know, but he never reveals specifics. Close friends sometimes catch him staring into space with a haunted expression, as if he's remembering things he wishes he could forget. In his final years, Elvis's drug use and psychological deterioration can be partially attributed to the unprocessed trauma of his intelligence work in Germany. He carries the weight of classified operations, failed missions, and lost lives without ever being able to seek proper treatment or even acknowledgement for what he experienced. This story is creative storytelling inspired by the mysterious aspects of Elvis's military service and the extensive intelligence operations that were conducted during the Cold War era. While Operation Heartbreak Hotel is fictional, it represents the kinds of psychological warfare and cultural influence campaigns that both sides used during this period of history. Elvis's military service in Germany has always contained elements that don't entirely make sense if he was just a regular soldier doing routine duties. His relatively comfortable living arrangements, his freedom to travel, and his apparent access to experiences that other soldiers didn't have suggest that his service may have involved aspects that were never made public. The psychological changes that friends and family noticed in Elvis after his return from Germany, increased paranoia, difficulty sleeping, and what appears to be symptoms of trauma, are consistent with someone who experienced high-stress, dangerous situations that he was never able to process or discuss. Whether Elvis actually participated in intelligence operations during his military service, we may never know. But the story represents the very real psychological cost that secret operations exact on the people who participate in them, particularly when those people are not trained intelligence officers but celebrities or civilians recruited for their unique access or abilities. The Cold War was indeed fought through cultural influence as much as military might, and Elvis Presley's music was undeniably a powerful force for American cultural penetration behind the Iron Curtain. Soviet authorities did ban rock and roll music, and young people in communist countries did risk imprisonment to listen to Elvis's songs. The real tragedy may be that Elvis was used by forces larger than himself, not just the entertainment industry, but potentially government agencies, without ever being given proper support for the psychological consequences of that use. If this story made you think about the hidden costs of fame and the ways that governments use celebrities for purposes beyond entertainment, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because next week we're exploring another classified chapter of Elvis's life that the government tried to erase. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think celebrities should be recruited for intelligence operations? Should Elvis have been protected from this kind of dangerous service? Share this video with someone who understands that the people we admire may have carried burdens and secrets that we can't imagine. Because here's the truth this story teaches us. Fame can be a prison as much as a privilege. And sometimes the price of serving your country is more than anyone should have to pay. The music is bigger than any of us, but the secrets behind the music can destroy the person who made it. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Elvis's classified past. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll uncover another truth that powerful people tried to bury forever. Remember, heroes aren't just the people who fight wars. They're also the people who carry the weight of what those wars required, long after the fighting is over. Thanks for watching.